The world is broken. My heart is broken. I worry. I'm often afraid. I don't sleep well. Sometimes I'm not even sure I'm breathing. What do we need? Tikkun olam. Tikkun is the Hebrew word meaning repair or heal. Olam mean the world. Tikkun olam, heal the world. Often this Jewish rabbinical teaching is applied to social or political action and activism. And I'm trying. But to be honest, at heart, I am seriously conflict-averse. So what can I do? Worrying, being afraid, not sleeping, and not breathing clearly aren't helping anyone. Change doesn't happen without action. And I truly believe in our UU principles of justice, equity, peace, liberty, and compassion for all. But beliefs without action won't heal the injustice, division, fear, and hatred of a broken world. And yet, any activity which improves the world, bringing it closer to the harmonious state for which it was created, is considered tikkun olam. So Jews strive to perform mitzvah, which in its purest sense means commandment, but most often means good deeds. So this morning, I am calling on any and all other reluctant activists, disheartened crusaders for peace and harmony to join me in one simple mitzvah. Yes, great. Now, catch someone's eye. Right now, don't say a word and just smile. Okay. Now, say a little prayer for technology. Share screen. Nope, you can't see it up there, can you? All right, go to Zoom and share screen. There. Yay! All right. All right, so I know. So what you just did seems simplistic, right? But what you just did is not simplistic. You got out of your head your problems, your worries, your fears. You transcended the boundaries of yourself and you connected to another person across any number of divides of politics, religion, class, race, age, ability, sexual, gender identity, you name it, all in 1 second without saying a word. And you asked for nothing in return. That is surely a mitzvah. Your smile is one of those sparks which rises up and is helping to repair the world, bringing it closer to the harmonious state for which it was created. Okay, if you still think this sounds too simple, too easy, too good to be true, think about the simplest of humans, babies. Look at our babies. It's going to be over before. Thank you, thank you. You will be my new guru. Were you smiling? How does it feel when a baby smiles at you? Loved? Trusted? Pretty special? Like, we must be pretty great, huh? This baby's smiling at me, look at that. But to be honest, we don't earn that smile, do we? We don't prove ourselves worthy. We aren't bonding over shared beliefs. Why? Because we don't need to. Babies don't care. They take us at face value. Sorry, bad pun. But they do. They welcome us with a smile and wait to see what we will do with it. And if we smile, bam, we're in. We're accepted, we're connected. Did you know they say children smile 300 to 400 times a day? Adults smile on average 15 to 20. What's that about? Well, psychiatrist Robert Holden, who runs laughter clinics for England's National Health Service, and yes, I totally want that job, says most adults spend their time waiting for things to get better instead of seeing the humor in life. Now, it's hard to be an adult. It's hard to be an adult. We experience pain, inequity, suffering. It's hard to find humor when we are living through difficult, sometimes seemingly hopeless times. And we understand dangers that babies have yet to learn, right? Babies live in the moment, but we have the past and the future to reckon with. Yet, if you think of it, babies and children in even the direst of situations, refugee camps, hospitals, living with chronic illness, abuse, time and again somehow find laughter and joy in the smallest act of connection. A red-nosed hospital clown, a silly dance, puppets, a smile. And they offer their smiles without asking for anything in return. Fun fact, did you know people who are born blind, never seen a smile, show the same smiles under the same situations as sighted people? Suggesting that like babies, you don't have to learn how to smile. Smiling is pre-programmed behavior. You only choose when and how to use it. And how often? How often do you smile? Once or twice a day? 15 to 20 times a day? 300 to 400 times a day? Baby smiles are expressions of genuine pleasure. All right, feeling down? Want to increase your daily dose of smiles? Just pull up YouTube or TikToks and try not to smile. Oh, it's not going to do it for me. Well, you don't get to hear it. But trust me, I lost 45 minutes of my life going down the rabbit hole trying to, because it was research, and it just brightened my whole day. All right. Unshare. I don't know how to unshare, so I'll just leave it there. Is anybody on Zoom, Pam? No. Okay, then it doesn't matter that they can't see me. All right, enough. But seriously, baby's smile, your smile this morning, is not just a selfish pleasure, because intentionally or not, smiles strengthen not only our own sense of humor, but as I said, forge connections in the world. When we smile, we transcend our own boundaries and our own situation and connect with someone else and something else. So, can you imagine the profound, radical impact it could make if the 8 billion people in our world just smiled at each other each day? Even just the people on their block, at work, in the checkout line, train station, fast food window. Wouldn't you call that a little activism? A little tikkun olam? Now, have you ever had a day when you can't remember anyone smiling at you? Or worse, when you can't remember yourself smiling? Have you ever had a smile change your day? I remember a really rough morning several years ago. Why was it so rough? I don't know. It was a day like any other day, like today, except in my mind. Well, first my alarm didn't go off, so I was late getting my son to school, and he was mad at me because he forgot his homework. We don't have time to go back, so, tough luck, kid. Smiles so far this morning, 0. I'm also running late for my doctor's appointment that I've waited 3 months for, so of course the traffic is backed up and creeping, and I left my coffee on the counter. I am definitely waiting for things to get better. And then I realize, true story, I am headed to the wrong office. Oh, I am definitely not seeing any humor. But you know what? Forget it. I am already going to be humiliatingly late, so I am at least going to get my dang coffee. So I race to the Starbucks drive-thru and order a small coffee with cream and sugar because I am not in the mood to play the Grande Cafe Latte game today. And the voice from the speaker suddenly sounds like an obstructionist opponent. What do you mean I have to wait 2 minutes while you finish brewing a new pot? Well, I pull up to get my coffee, bringing my little gray rain cloud with me up to the window, and the cashier flashes me a dazzling smile, so genuine. I'm frantically trying to think how she somehow knows me and I can't remember her, but no, she's a total stranger and I can't help myself. Damn it! I smile. And suddenly, honest to God, it was like the sun broke through, changed my whole personal forecast for the day. I just received a free mitzvah with my coffee. In fact, I caught myself smiling with every sip of coffee all the way to the doctor, and even as I was sheepishly apologizing for being so late, whereupon the receptionist smiled and said, "That's okay, it happens." It's so true. When you smile, the whole world smiles with you. And guess what? Even babies know that. Starting between 6 and 8 weeks of life, they say babies develop a social smile, an intentional gesture of warmth. And by 4 months of age, they are interacting in a goal-oriented manner, utilizing a sophisticated understanding of timing in social interactions. So again, smiling is not just a selfish pleasure-making drug. Yes, it feels good and it makes the receiver feel good, but it is also an invitation to connection. And it is also a test. Do you smile back? Are you friend or foe, nurturer or predator? Some scientists believe that our friendly human smile probably evolved from a much more aggressive display of fangs intended to frighten a potential foe. The musculature is the same. Baring teeth, flattening ears, tightening throat muscles. Thank you very much. Only the intent evolved from threatening to connecting. Perhaps this test element to smiling is a link between the fang-flashing smile of our primate ancestors and the friendly smile of humans. That's my son, who's probably not thrilled that I'm using that, but oh well. But how much have we evolved? What do we do in unknown situations, with strangers, say? Brent Staples is a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Times, honored for his editorials on American racial justice and culture. Way back in the 1980s, though, Staples wrote an essay called "Just Walk On By," which he later revised and republished as "Black Men and Public Spaces," in which he wrote about his experience as a grad student at the University of Chicago. Walking down the streets of U of C's Hyde Park neighborhood, Staples says, "I became an expert in the language of fear. Couples locked their arms or reached for each other's hands when they saw me. Some crossed to the other side of the street. People who were carrying on conversations went mute and stared straight ahead, as though avoiding my eyes would save them. I did violence to them," he said, "just by being." Think about that a minute. I did violence to them just by being. He goes on, though, Out of nervousness, I began to whistle. On the street at night, I whistled popular tunes from the Beatles and Vivaldi's Four Seasons. And the tension drained from people's bodies when they heard me. A few even smiled as they passed me in the dark. Now, there are layers of complexity embedded in this simple story. Although Mr. Staples doesn't mention race, the fact is he was an African-American male walking at night in a neighborhood deeply divided by race, opportunity, income, and education. Who locked their arms or crossed the street? To whom in particular did he do violence just by being? In whose minds was he a threat? Who do you imagine? Was Mr. Staples being ironic when he says he worried about doing violence? Was whistling Vivaldi self-calming, a friendly gesture of welcome, a calculated attempt to refute stereotyping or create commonality? Sadly, we are still deeply divided by race, opportunity, income, and education, aren't we? No matter whether it was innocent or calculated, like a smile, though, Staples' whistling changed people's reaction to him. His whistling made others smile back. People who a minute before had been afraid of him. So, yes, a simple wordless gesture can change someone's perception and lessen the divide of fear and hostility. But actually, I think the more radical story here, the mitzvah nobody acted on, comes from those very folks who were afraid of Mr. Staples. What if those fearful others had swallowed their stereotypes, denied their gut fear reaction, and smiled at him as they passed instead of avoiding him? A smile is the quickest, easiest signal that I don't see you as a threat, I'm not judging you, and ultimately, I am reaching out to you across the mental, emotional divide between us. And just like that baby at 4 months old, that smile is a moment of transcendence, invitation, and a gift. Now, I have a default fear switch just like those couples in Hyde Park at night. Sometimes my lizard brain takes over my heart and my head brains. When I pass, say, a teen, and I have one of those, with head down and hoodie up, I admit, sometimes it feels like he has a big do not disturb sign on. Or worse, do I see menace behind his eyes? God, it's so easy to give in to unfounded fears, feelings of anxiety and suspicion, isn't it? Especially when we feel like we're living in a dangerous, divisive world. But you know what? Brent Staples says he could hear the thunk, thunk, thunk as they hammered down the door locks when I came into view. He saw them look away or clasp arms or cross the street, putting a safe distance between them. Haven't we all done that in some way at some time? Reacted to someone with fear and judgment for no really rational reason? I know I have. There's a man I often see in the neighborhood talking to himself or to someone invisible to me, at least. You may have seen him too, right here. So I just walk by. Or if he seems agitated, maybe I've crossed the street. Just a couple months ago, though, when I arrived here at church to set up on Sunday, he was outside on the church grounds, all alone, spraying the garden hose around wildly and talking animatedly to nobody I could see. Okay, what should I do? Should we call someone? As I struggled, our very own great-hearted Mary Crowley said, matter-of-factly, without dropping a beat, well, let's go say hi. As I struggled, we walked out. I followed her nervously, and here's what happened. We smiled. He smiled. We introduced ourselves. He introduced himself. I'm Joshua. I'm watering the tree, he said. Oh, that's great, Joshua. But you know, it rained last night, so I don't think you need to water anymore, said Mary. Oh, okay, I'll put the hose away. Would you like a glass of water? She said. Sure, that would be nice. By the time I brought him a water bottle and a cup of ice, he'd put the hose away. We all said goodbye, smiled again, and went back to our morning plans. Now, I'm not saying you should be oblivious to danger or throw caution to the wind, but what must that feel like to be feared and avoided? Who is doing violence to whom? Sadly, what those recurring experiences of fear and judgment did to Mr. Staples at that time in his life was to transform his natural friendliness into anger. Rather than whistling or smiling, he began to provoke those who seemed most afraid. I felt a surge of power, he said. These people were mine. I could do with them as I wished. They'd made me terrifying. Now I'd show them how terrifying I could be. When provoked, we're not that far evolved from our primate ancestors that our friendly test smile won't revert to fang flashing. But more importantly, how we react to someone affects them. So how hard is it to imagine that many people who are frightening to us are hardened by our fear of them, are reacting to our wordless signs of rejection, fear, or indifference? Smile or look away can be a more radical choice than you might think. A smile says we see a fellow person without labels, inferences, or judgments. And so many people today, especially people of color with any kind of difference on any of the margins, are so used to being feared, judged, rejected, or avoided that even a simple smile can be a bridge back to our shared humanity. And that's what I think ultimately raises a smile from an expression of pleasure, from a friendly welcome, from a teeny weeny mitzvah to a spiritual act of grace. Grace is the opposite of karma. Karma is getting what you deserve. Grace is getting what you don't deserve. Karma is giving what you think someone deserves. Grace is giving what you think someone needs, regardless of whether they deserve it or not. And when we smile, we are sharing grace with another member of our human family who lives in our broken world just like we do and is in need of grace just like we are. Mother Teresa says, we can never know all the good that a simple smile can do. Do you believe her? How about Kevin Hines? Kevin Hines was a distraught 19-year-old college student with bipolar issues and voices in his head that he had kept a secret from his family and doctors for 15 years. He didn't want to die, but he believed he had to. So he took a bus to the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, visibly in tears, and looked to the different strangers he encountered, hoping one would ask him what was wrong. None of them did, so he threw himself off the bridge. Now, miraculously, he survived and went on to become an author and mental health advocate. But he tells of another person who jumped off the same bridge, who left a suicide note saying he would not go through with it if a single person smiled at him that day. That man is dead, said Hines. People can save others just by smiling at them. Now, I know too many folks who have suffered the devastating loss of a loved one to suicide to oversimplify this complex issue. But the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline also lifts up the power of a smile in their hashtag Be the One, as in Be the One to Save a Life campaign. I noticed that my boyfriend would always wave to everyone while we were driving around. No matter who it was, he'd flash a smile and wave happily, even if they gave him weird looks and didn't wave back. I asked him why he waved to strangers like that, and he said, well, I heard some people who had tried but failed to commit suicide. Many of them said if a stranger had just acknowledged them with a smile or a wave, they wouldn't have tried to end their lives. I want to save a life today. We can never know all the good that a simple smile can do. With Joshua, with these people, with anyone we see. And you don't have to save someone from jumping off a bridge to be making a difference. My husband smiled and waved at the elderly lady down the street from us on his way to and from the train for an entire year before she even began to smile back. She was a difficult person. Suspicious, demanding, fearful, stubborn, and very private. But slowly, she began to open her door to us, to share a little, to smile back. Sadly, for me, it wasn't until her funeral that I learned her life story. How she hid in a basement from the Nazis, escaping to the US as a teenager without a friend or a penny, struggled the rest of her life in this new country to learn the language, to work, to raise a child through 3 failed marriages, only to become estranged from her daughter as well and end up isolated in her big house where she was difficult, suspicious, demanding, fearful, stubborn, and very private, and ultimately died alone. I was heartsick to think about the life that led her to become that, but also happy to think that our smiles and our persistence in some way led to some measure of reconnection and unlocked some closed rooms in her heart in the last few years of her life. Anthony D'Angelo says, smile. It is the key that fits the lock of everybody's heart. How little we know about our friends, even here, our neighbors, the people we see every day, even those who, maybe like Joshua, maybe make us a little nervous. Everybody hurts, everybody needs grace, and we can give it. Tikkun olam. So remember the last time a baby smiled at you? Or a dog wagged its tail when you walked up, or somebody gave you a hug, or a neighbor or a stranger smiled and waved. Remember the last time you walked on by, or locked your car door, or your heart. Remember the last time you waited for things to get better instead of finding the humor and smiling now. And commit to #BeTheOne. We need activism of all kinds. Protests, rallies, petitions, marches, yes. So I keep trying to stand up and activate my beliefs. And I know, like many of you, you do those things, whether it's inside your comfort zone or out. We mail postcards to swing states. We march for Black Lives Matter. We make meals and help feed and clothe our migrant neighbors. We collect for the unhoused. We support with our donations the National Alliance for Mental Illness, LGBTQ+. Sometimes we wear our hearts and our beliefs on our sleeves and our coats and in our yards. And we are about to continue listening and talking about the situation overseas in Israel and Gaza as we bring forth the resolution at the meeting. And we're going to vote, right? So I know, as you do, that we all need to step outside of our comfort zones if we're to repair this world of ours. Yes, and, anybody remember yes, and? We also need the everyday activism of grace. God, it's such a terribly small thing, a smile. But even, maybe especially when we fear we can do no great things, we can always do small things with great love. And you are a social activist every time you smile at another person, because every smile transcends our selfish boundaries, invites connection to our shared humanity, and is a personal spiritual practice because it is grace we offer, not because anyone deserves it, but because we all need it. And we may never know how any tiny act of grace makes a difference. But I have faith that even just the smile, the grace of a smile, has the power to bridge differences, heal wounds, and save lives. Together, we gather the sparks of light and help to repair our world one mitzvah at a time. And think about it. It only takes 1 second to smile at someone. There are 86,400 seconds every single day, and there are over 8 billion people in the world. How could that not make a difference? Thank you.